It is my privilege to introduce my mom, Tammy Cole. She lives on Bainbridge Island, Washington, with our family, her husband and my dad, Michael, her son and my brother, Nathan, me, her daughter, Gabby, and our dog, Sam. She is co-founder of Optimistic Orchard, a nonprofit dedicated to regenerating the earth, loving her people, and inspiring others to join us. She graduated from Kiss the Ground Soil Advocate Training. She is passionate about helping people love the life they live and cherishes Mother Earth. She is licensed as an attorney and practices as an appellate paralegal. She enjoys spending time with our family, listening to my brother play the trumpet, me play the French horn, and my dad play his violin. She is a writer, a kickboxer, and a yogi. She meditates and plays the frame drum. She believes all living things have value and strives to contribute to the greater good in all she does. I think you'll agree she's awesome and inspiring. Please join me in welcoming Tammy Cole.
Thank you for the introduction, Sweet Pea. You and your brother are a big reason I do this, and thank you all for joining me tonight. As Gabby said, we started a nonprofit to support our efforts to spread the word of soil, Optimistic Orchard. If you'd like to know more, our website is optimisticorchard.org. It has dates and topics for upcoming presentations, information about other projects we're working on, and more. Or you can find us on Facebook. In my last talk, I gave an overview of why I love soil so much. Tonight, I will deep dive into how and why to rebuild soil. But first, I'd like to start us off with a meditation. So make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take 2 deep breaths. Relax and settle in. Take yourself to your favorite spot in nature. It could be the top of a mountain, looking out over an expanse of land, on a beach, listening to waves crash against the shore, in a forest, watching trees sway in the wind, near a stream, gurgling as it flows past you, in a meadow with brightly blooming wildflowers, or on a riverbank with fish swimming by. Think about who you want to be in this world. What mark do you want to leave? What influence will your life have? Whom will you impact? How big will you dream? Ponder how future generations will remember you. Now, think about what needs to happen to make this vision a reality. What actions do you need to take? What do you need to reach out? Who do you need to reach out to? Where do you need to go? Picture yourself taking these actions. See yourself living a life you love. Trust that you will accomplish more than you ever imagined possible. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the room. So I told you last time in my presentation about how in 2007, Michael did a school project where he measured the trash at our house. We were stunned and ashamed by how much we consumed and wasted. So we shifted our lives to focus on sustainability, but it just never felt like enough. And then we watched the movie Kiss the Ground at the end of 2020, and it blew our minds. We have since shifted our lives again, this time to focus on regeneration. The point in the movie that really made me take notice was an estimate by the UN that we have 60 harvests or 20 to 30 years before we have no soil. Gabby's 14 and Nathan is 12. Considering the average lifespan in the US is currently 79, that's easily in their lifetime. People are already feeling the impacts of desertification, and we will start feeling it in our area in my lifetime. Learning that we have a solution, soil, felt like a secret that's too good not to share. And as my family can attest, I'm the worst secret keeper ever. So here we are. So let's start with today, where is carbon stored? It's stored in the atmosphere. We all know the atmosphere has too much carbon. It's stored in the biosphere. Trees are made of carbon and help balance the climate, but it's also stored in the pedosphere or the soil, which is what's often overlooked, and how much carbon is in our soil and its potential to hold even more. We have removed 136 billion tons of carbon from the soil since the Industrial Revolution. But still, there is more carbon in our soil than in our atmosphere and the biosphere combined. And the potential to store more is almost unlimited. Last time I talked to you about the Great Exchange and how plant roots don't just take, they also give back. This is a picture of the rhizosphere. It's the region of the soil directly influenced by the root secretions and microorganisms, also called the microbiome. The plant's carbon sugars, called exudates, leave the roots to feed the microorganisms like fungi and bacteria. And in exchange, bacteria make nutrients available to the plant. Fungal hyphae burrow into the rocks and bring nutrients back to the roots, and microbial metabolites feed the roots. Overall, 30 to 40% of the plant's carbon sugars are shared to feed soil microorganisms, which are therefore made of carbon. And another important piece is the glomalin. Glomalin equals carbon. Soil aggregates or clumps are formed by glomalin on the hyphae. It's like a glue that sticks the particles together. And at least 15 to 20% of carbon in undisturbed soil is in glomalin, and sometimes it can be above 50%. Oop. Moving too fast. The liquid carbon pathway is the main driver of healthy soil formation and function. Soil aggregates form when there's active biology, plants, fungi, and microbes that animate the soil by the billions. Recall that a teaspoon of healthy soil has as many living organisms as there are people on the planet. So when I look at soil, now I admire the amazing process that aggregated all those particles together. The plant sharing its sugar, the microbes, and sharing their nutrients with the plants. This is a close-up on the expansion of a plant's root capacity with the inclusion of mycorrhizal fungi. So when we eliminate this over 500 million year relationship, we put a huge burden on the planet. The plant can't access the minerals it requires for itself, so we have to provide enough nutrients to compensate. I think we all know what a food chain is. Some people might know what a food web is, some might not. But a food web shows how life in an area interacts with other life in a more complex way than a simple food chain. This is the soil food web. Everything is essential for the system to function at higher levels and build greater carrying capacity. So it all starts with the plant harnessing sun energy to create carbohydrates. The fungi provide nutrients to the plant and take carbon from the plant, and they also decompose organic matter. The bacteria decompose organic matter as well, and the protozoa consume the bacteria. And then there's 3 types of nematodes: root feeders that eat the roots of the plant, fungal and bacterial feeders that eat fungi and bacteria, and predators like worms that eat protozoa and smaller nematodes. There are 2 types of arthropods: shredders that eat root-feeding nematodes, fungi, and bacteria, and predators that eat nematodes and shredder arthropods. From there, we go above ground to the birds and animals that eat the predator arthropods. One important thing here that isn't shown on this diagram is that everything circles back to the organic matter. So life begets life. Nature is designed to create a net gain. Nature is designed to create a net carbon gain in the soil. Otherwise, it would constantly be degenerating, and there would only be deserts. Nature is also designed to maximize its ability to move energy through the system to feed all life. That starts with sun energy bonding carbon with oxygen and water. So you might be wondering, what is the soil? What is the structure of soil? Right? We talked last time about how soil is made. So what is in soil? What is soil? What's the difference between soil and dirt? So the goal with soil is to maximize the capture of solar energy by creating as many plant sugars via photosynthesis as possible. More plants growing can be achieved in basically 3 ways: increased duration of plant growth, increased density of plants, or increased total leaf area. On the other hand, 3 major things can set you backwards: tilling, overgrazing or undergrazing, and leaving soil bare. The system is either getting more energy and being able to build, or it's getting less energy and it's going into decline. So back to what is soil? Soil is approximately 45% sand, silt, and clay. That's what you would call dirt. And then when you add 50% air and water and 5% soil organic matter, that's when you get soil. So why is the air so important? All organisms, including plants, need air. So air is about 20% oxygen, 1% argon, less than 1% CO2, and 78% nitrogen. The problem is atmospheric nitrogen can't be used by plants, so bacteria harvest nitrogen and convert it to useful compounds. Certain plants take in the compounds to use for energy, to mature, and to produce seeds that grow into new plants. And organisms eat the plants, benefit from the nitrogen fixing, and when they die, they decay, releasing fixed nitrogen into the soil to be used by other plants. So as older plants die, they make room for younger ones, sharing their fertilizer as they break down. It's yet another exchange that occurs between plants and microorganisms in the soil. And when we remove the old plant matter, we're removing the nutrients from the cycle. And when we add synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, it throws the whole system out of balance. Another thing about the air is that it provides space for those microorganisms to live. So they have the space to grow. And now, so that's soil. So then obviously the key to the soil is the soil organic matter. So what is soil organic matter? So this shows a breakout of what the composition of soil organic matter. Now these charts are just estimates. And so soil organic matter is anything that is or was alive, and that's the key. Soil organic matter is made up mostly of humus, which is this kind of brown or black substance that forms when plant and animal matter decays. Some people, they call that the compost, but it's actually just a component of the compost. But you've probably seen that kind of dark material. And then soil organic matter is also actively decomposing plant and animal matter, living roots and organisms, and some dead matter. So why is this so important? Carbon goes from soil into plants and turns into exudates and goes back into the soil without ever going back up into the atmosphere. And 5%, unfortunately, is a generous average of soil organic matter right now. Most farms in California Central Valley used to be above 10% organic matter, but now they're only about 1%. But healthy soil can be up to 18 to 20% organic matter. So soil organic matter is carbon-based, and carbon acts like a sponge, a carbon sponge. Another thing is that if without the organic matter, demineralized soil lacks enough phosphorus or calcium, mostly because there's not enough organic matter to make it available to the plants in the soil. It doesn't have the biology to break down silt or clay to make those minerals. So more organic matter equals more water and more air. On the left side, you can see the compaction. There's not a lot of pore space, so when it rains, there's runoff instead of infiltration. Less water and air leads to less nitrogen availability, and less nitrogen cycling leads to less life in the soil. Large-scale agriculture soil is only about 1% soil organic matter with not a single earthworm in sight, which is why when you fly over most agricultural areas in the United States, you'll see that it looks really brown and really compacted. On the right side, you see an example of aggregation. It's extremely porous, so water is absorbed and the soil acts like a sponge. More life equals better water holding capacity and more nutrient cycling. Some soil organic matter oxidizes, producing CO2, which is hard for plants to get. And this creates a whole system where there's a net carbon gain in the soil instead of a net carbon loss. So I've talked a lot about how, and it incorporates some of the why, but now I'm going to get more into why. Why isn't sustainability enough? Well, Albert Einstein once said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And that applies here. For 10,000 years, in most places where humans practiced agriculture, time in production meant landscape function was going down. Overgrazing, deforestation, and tilling were degrading the land, even before the advent of major machinery and chemicals. As populations increased, the stress on the land continued, leaving us where we are today, with most of the world's land degraded. So it makes no sense to sustain at this point when we could actually start regenerating our land while in production of the land. Nature, whether our bodies or soil, will regenerate and recover when injury or disturbance occurs. This is what sustaining our bodies and the land actually looks like. So think about it. Leaving an open wound with road rash on your leg for 3 years is like leaving tilled soil bare for 3 years. Neither of those things is going to lead to the health of the system. And where we are now is that 75% of land is degraded. This includes lands that have become deserts, are polluted, or have been deforested and converted to agricultural production. If this trend continues, 95% of Earth's land will be degraded by 2050. This would force hundreds of millions of people to migrate as food production collapses, and it's already happening in places all over the world. We're losing soil at an alarming rate. To keep up with the global food demand, the UN estimates that nearly 15 million acres of new soil will be needed every year. But instead, nearly 30 million acres are lost to soil degradation every year. We're going backwards at a rate of nearly 45 million acres a year. And as FDR said, a nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. This is a picture of the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East today. It was the birthplace of civilization because of its vast resource of fertile topsoil. But farming and overgrazing turned the soil to deserts because even early farming wasn't actively removing soil carbon. I'm sorry, it was actively removing soil carbon. The Fertile Crescent used to be fertile. What some people don't know is that so did California. But there is some good news. So for over 1,000 years, humans have separated themselves from the natural world. We've got agriculture, which is taking and extracting, ownership, distinguishing the human from the rest of the world, modern advances, understanding science, industrial agriculture, and advances that have gone crazy. And we wrote ourselves out of nature. The definition of nature is the phenomena of the physical world collectively, including plants, animals, the landscape, and other features and products of the earth, as opposed to humans or human creations. Let that sink in for a minute. We defined nature as earth as opposed to humans or human creations. So how we interact with the world is dictated by that separation view. So I said there's good news. How do we write ourselves back into nature? This is the good news. Our views dictate our actions because they decide what we see or perceive as possible, and our actions create our outcomes. We must change our perspective for how we see the world around us to change. I was living with the understanding that the equation of climate change was settled. And then I learned something that changed the whole equation. It took away my apathy, and I saw the potential for the future with a new understanding of what is possible. We live regeneratively, and we spread the word. Now that you know, you have a responsibility to change your perspective, to share it, and become part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. And we rebuild soil, because soil is the essential foundation or the matrix for all life on land. It's the source of 95% of food produced. It's the base of all on-land diversity. It's the reason we have clean water sources, the most biodiverse ecosystem on the planet. It's the most scalable and best carbon sink. It's low tech, it's low cost, with many additional benefits. And it's a bigger carbon pool than the atmosphere and the biosphere combined, even though soil has lost 50 to 70% of its carbon stock. So how do we write ourselves back into nature? By using a combination of indigenous knowledge, cutting-edge scientific discoveries, and the principles and practices developed by pioneering farmers and holistic thinkers. We write ourselves back into nature by changing our perspective. So these are dates of upcoming. I'm going to add you all in and we can have a chat in a second, but these are dates of our upcoming presentations. The next one is going to be on regenerative agriculture. It's not the cow, it's the how. And that'll be on Sunday, May 16th at 2. And as I said before, you can also find these on our website. And if you enjoy these presentations and want to financially support our efforts, there's a place on our website to donate. Our 501c3 application is pending, and hopefully those donations will be tax deductible soon. Or if you are unable to donate, but you'd like to help out or stay current on what we're up to, you can send us an email or sign up for our newsletter on our website. And I will, let me see, I will add you all, oh, if my mouse will work. I'm going to add you all in as panelists, and then we can chat. And you can feel free to leave yourself off video or on mute or participate in the conversation if you have questions. Let me know. I'm almost there. Okay, and let me stop sharing. And then I will, I'm gonna get you guys on my big screen so I can see better. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to leave it on my little screen. All right. So I'll open up the floor. Do people have questions? Questions, comments, anything? Leah, you're on mute.
Hi. I thought that was great. And I have a question / comment for you. I love how you sort of mentioned and also left us in a position where we're thinking about how we need to integrate ourselves back into nature. And was wondering, so maybe you've had practices that you've been doing for a while, or I know that your daughter said that you meditate, but just wondering how you have connected back to nature and how that's kind of helped you shift your mindset.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do, actually, our family has a daily grounding practice that we do. So in the morning, kind of as we start our day, we go out, and it was really exciting because this weekend we planted in the garden. We actually live in a forest, so it's kind of nice. But we went out into the garden and we stand, I'll go through the whole ritual. We stand in a circle. We have a morning prayer and gratitude circle. And so we stand and we do kind of a moment of Zen, and, kind of close your eyes and just get connected with the earth and feel your feet on the ground, and pull energy up from the earth and let it flow through your chakras and up and through your body, and just kind of get grounded and centered, and just really get appreciative for what the earth can offer us. And then we offer up a prayer, and then each of us, all four of us do. And then we go through and say a thank you, something, sometimes it's thank you for the birds and the sunshine, and, or thank you for a great day we had yesterday, or whatever gratitude is in our heart. And then we actually our family has a family cheer, all like middle school sports teams that we all put our hands in and kind of go Cole family. And so it really brings us back to appreciating what the earth has to offer us, and getting connected with that energy and getting grounded for our day. And so that really has helped us kind of shift from the go, right? The like always on the move, always doing stuff, but also really getting, when you stand with all four corners of your feet on the ground, especially if you can do it barefoot. It's kind of cold in the Northwest. We live in Seattle, so it gets kind of cold, or near Seattle. But if you can stand, in flip-flops or in bare feet, all four corners of your feet on the ground, and feel the ground beneath your feet, it's amazing how much better you can feel and how much more connected you feel. Another thing you can do is grow your own food, or know where your food comes from. Talk to the farmer, go to the farmer's market, get to know kind of, instead of just picking up a box off the shelf, if if it's fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and or talking to the rancher who, is raising the meat. Some of the other things is we compost. We're super compost nerds. One of the things that I'm actually in the works for a future thing is going to be an interview series on composting. And so we have a worm bin that we have in the house. And then we also just started a compost pile out back that we're working on. And so anytime that you can start building your own soil, you get your hands in there. If you're planting your own stuff or building your own soil or anything like that, it definitely connects you back in and makes you realize that we are part of the system, that we are not the up here looking down on the system. So that's some of the stuff that we do in our house. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to share, but yeah, that's some of the stuff to keep ourselves grounded.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Let me see in the comments, what can we do with our own personal gardens at home to practice regenerating our soil? So there's a lot of things that you can do. The same practices that apply in large scale agriculture apply in a small scale. So not tilling, not using pesticides, not using fertilizer, and letting it go. I know Crystal asked the question. I know they have chickens. Letting the chickens roam around the garden and leave their droppings and fertilize that way is helpful. Integrating the animals into it. You can using especially on a small scale, if you're in a backyard garden, you can use compost that has microbes in it. You can purchase them online or in a garden store, and that can help rebuild it. So using the same principles is a really good way. I don't know, Michael, do you have, he's not on video. I don't know if he can hear me. I don't know if he's paying attention. My husband, he's the gardener connoisseur. I'm actually going to take in June, I'm starting a garden class so that I can learn more about that. Honey, do you have any other ideas or suggestions on the backyard?
Yeah, I mean, especially for pesticide use like ladybugs or some natural predator that will eat the pesticides instead of having, or sorry, the pests instead of having to put chemicals down. Definitely compost. That's going to be your best way for nutrients. And yeah, I mean, just any chickens is really good. Chickens will also peck out the pests, at least some of them. But you have to be careful, because then the chickens can start also eating your plants, and that's not good. So don't leave them there. But yeah, that's about what I have so far. I'm still learning myself, but
I thought of another thing. Somebody just told me the other day that if you have slugs, you can break up eggshells and put eggshells over the top of the garden, and the slugs don't like crawling on the eggshells. And so they will leave your we'll see. She's experimenting. I haven't done it yet, but it was something a friend of mine had horrible slugs. And so she's trying it. So we'll see how it goes. But that was one of the things that I just learned about was eggshells. So that was kind of cool.
Another thing on the slugs is you can get them, if you can get them to, like if you find out what food they really like and put it in the middle of a bird bath, they'll go to the food, and then any native birds will come and eat the slugs.
That's an interesting, yeah, I hadn't thought, yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the key in any of this is creating a balance, right? So if you have an overgrowth of something, there is a reason that you have an overgrowth of it. So finding out how you can, as a human, we can shepherd things back into balance. So for instance, I've known on farms where they had an overabundance of snails. And so they brought in some ducks, and the ducks will help bring the snails back into balance. And so it's just looking at, I mean, if you think about with your body, Western medicine is, and I'm going to do a talk on how the health and the soil interact later. But Western medicine is kind of focused on how do we cover up the problem, right? Like give it a medicine or something. And that's a lot of how current agriculture is kind of covering it up. So if you are spraying pesticides, if you're doing fertilizer, it's all just covering it up. But if you can look at what is the source of and what's the root of the problem, what is causing the issue, then you can address that and instead of just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do either of you Michael, Tammy, have any thoughts or no information on diatomaceous earth?
I haven't looked into that. I've heard a lot about it. I don't know if anybody else has. I don't know anything very much about it. Have you used it?
Yeah, it seems like a natural thing to use. One, for snails, they don't like it. Two, if you put it around your plants, a lot of the bugs won't come to them. So we have used it, and I was just wondering if you had any more info on it.
I don't, but I'm making myself a note to look up and learn more about it.
And then you get to know, there's a whole Facebook page on it.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I haven't heard yet, but yeah.
And then have you seen there's a new thing out that's a really fast composter, like within hours? And I'm wondering, is it the same kind of compost? Is it good? Or Is
It
it?
is not the same kind of compost.
Is that the bokashi? Is that what you're talking about? Do you know the name of it?
I don't know.
I
I've seen
believe-
it, and basically all it does is grind up your food to a like super dry and ground up, and it doesn't actually, like, no microbes have done any processes to it, so it's just ground up food that you're now putting on your plants.
I don't think that's bokashi. Bokashi is a little bit different, but
No, it's like Lumo, or
I
there's
think,
like
yeah, there's a bunch of brands that it's like high end, like countertop composter, like electric ones. I
Hmm.
think
Yeah,
it's
that's
the,
exactly
like
what
Vitamix has one, I know.
oh yeah, that sounds like
There's a process that I have used before. Hi, Tammy, by the way, it's Bobby.
Hi, Bobby. Go ahead.
It's basically creating a soup for the earth mixed with seawater. Because seawater carries, if you have ever looked at the seabeds, and the soil is very, very high in nitrogen, nitric oxides and stuff. So it's basically creating a soup with those high profile mulchers or composters. And it's been very successful using it with hydroponic systems as well.
Interesting.
So are you saying it is a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing when you integrate it. Dry, using it dry is not. You have to almost create a soup or a drink for the earth.
That makes sense because that alleviates what Michael was saying, that it's just ground up food.
Correct.
With water?
Yeah, that makes
When you
sense.
say soup, like with water?
Yeah.
Seawater, ocean water.
Seawater.
Oh, with the seawater, that makes sense because that'll add the nutrients back in. That makes sense.
well,
Correct.
it makes
has
it
your
more
natural stuff.
bioavailable too.
Yeah,
Correct. Absolutely.
yeah, that makes
You
sense.
get to go collect seawater. I like that.
Buckets and big trailers.
Yeah.
And Carrie put in the comments that diatomaceous earth is tricky in the Northwest because of the amount of rain that we get. So the water will wash it away or dissolve or melt it into the dirt.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to look at. I know you guys are in California, so you don't have the rain issue we have here. But that is one, and that's one of the problems with when you're using like pesticides and fertilizers. It's not just what happens to the microbes and what happens in the soil. The runoff is also a factor. So anytime, especially when you're talking about a wet, rainy area, anytime you're looking at what you're adding an add on to the soil, anytime you're talking about that, you have to think about where it will run off to.
Right, but diatomaceous earth is edible.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. If it changes the pH, if it alters the salinity, if there's other things that it impacts, I just don't know enough about it. I will definitely do some research on it though and let you know.
Thank you. And then you said something just then about pH. Do you suggest balancing the pH in the, because it seems to be important for some of the plants.
I haven't gotten that deep into the science of it. I mean, I know you can. I know there are people who get super nerdy about what the composition of their soil and what it is. I mean, for me, for a backyard garden, if it's growing and it's, you've got, aggregating soil and it's looking good, I wouldn't personally, I mean, obviously I'm not an expert on that, but I personally wouldn't go that far as to deal with it. I mean, I think if you're talking a farm and you want to figure out, or you're going from some severely degenerated soil, then that might be something that you would want to look into. But I haven't heard of a lot of backyard gardeners going to those levels.
pH balances are only important when you're trying to, depending on how big your garden is, what kind of crops you're actually trying. Like, it's very important for vineyards to balance their pHs for the
Right,
certain
but
sweetness of grapes and stuff.
tomatoes get bottom rot, and that's where the pH balance helps.
Mm.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah. Tomatoes are tricky. Yeah. That might be something, some of it, a lot of it depends on, so we talk about a lot in the regenerative movement in general about context, right? Like, how much money do you have? How big is your area? What is your purpose? Are you just, are you growing for your own use? Is it for your own entertainment, for to regenerate soil? Like, what is the purpose of why you're growing the food? And so all of that matters. If it's something that, if your tomatoes aren't growing and you're getting rot, and it is something that you could look at that is the, is the pH the cause of the problem, I could see where that might be worth it. Again, it just depends. It's like looking at your own health, right? It's looking at the health of the plant. What does the plant need in order to grow, in order to be, why is it not growing? Is it in the soil? Is it not enough water? Is it overwatering? Is it pests? Or, what is going on? The same thing you would if you had a sore knee. What is causing your knee to hurt? Is it that you exercise too hard? Is it that you're eating something that's inflaming you? Is it, there are all different, do you have is there some kind of underlying disease, or, so looking at the whole overall context is going to be really important. Any other questions?
I don't think you knew I had muted at that point. Leah, to answer your question, I don't know what the perennials versus annuals are yet. That's my next stage in learning.
Well, thank you guys. I was just going to type that I really appreciate this. It was an amazing presentation. I'm going to hop off. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leah.
And thank you for that. Bye.
I also wanted to congratulate Tammy on a good presentation. Good for you.
Oh, thanks. Leah and Carlo were both in my Kiss the Ground soil advocate training with me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was great. You guys could make it. That was great.
Yeah.
I will answer Leah kind of separately, a little more but just to kind of share a little more on the perennials versus annuals, is that anytime you have annuals that you're pulling out or are obviously replanting every year, it impacts the soil. So you're tilling to some degree every time you deal with that. But if you're going to do, obviously there is some food that is an annual and there's no way to get around it. But the best thing to do to handle that is to leave the dead matter in the soil, on the ground. So like, I know when I was a kid, it was always like, my parents didn't, but there was always this thing about rake the leaves. And everybody wants their nice clean lawn. But if you just leave that matter on the ground, it will go back in and it will feed the microbes. And so, it's basically composting in and of itself. So if you have, like this year, we had just left all the stuff from last year and it was just kind of laying there. And so then when we went to go plant, it just stays there and it will continue to feed the new plants. And so then you don't, there was a time when people would think, especially even in like we have raised beds. And so people would go and just clean out the whole bed and pull all the dead matter out. But what we're learning is that it needs to stay in the ground. And so even in raised beds, it's important to leave the matter in the ground and let it stay there. So if you have annuals, that's the best way to continue using those nutrients, is just to leave them there for the microbes to nibble on. So any other questions?
Also, I had an idea, Tammy.
Yeah.
That if these groups of ours ever want to field test something and they don't have enough space, obviously, that I have quite a bit of acreage, but if anybody comes up with ideas and they want to field test some stuff, they can always go through you, obviously, and send their recommendations or test that they'd like to try out, and we can do that for them.
That's very generous of you, Bobby. Thank you. Any more questions? Gabby, you look poised to ask a question. Are you just sitting funny? You actually asked, Gabby, do you want to unmute yourself? Because when I was practicing, you asked an interesting question. Do you remember what I'm talking about? We were talking about it earlier today.
Yeah, so I asked if it was possible to have, you said earlier that it was either net carbon gain or net carbon loss in the soil, and I asked if it was possible to have net carbon neutral.
Yeah, and so what we were talking about earlier, Gabby and I were discussing it, and it's essentially, I mean, obviously, I guess theoretically, yes, but essentially with what we came up with is that with human intervention, the answer is no. That because if the system is designed to get equilibrium, but that is if we don't interfere with it, right? So animals and plants will get themselves back into equilibrium, right? So if you think about, 500 million years ago, there was 4,000 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, and no plants and no people and no animals and nothing on land. And then when plants came onto land and they start drawing down the carbon, and then the animals evolve, and the system starts getting more carbon into the soil and less carbon in the atmosphere, and then eventually we get to a general equilibrium. But the problem is that if with humans, then we start sucking it out, and if without humans it would start drawing down in, and but we are the constant battle that is the constant push and pull of it. And so without taking humans out of the equation, which I personally do not want to do, I think it would be really hard to get to that equilibrium. So, but I thought that was an interesting question. All right. Any more questions, comments? Otherwise, we will wrap it up for the evening. Awesome. All right. So thank you all so much for joining us for and coming and nerding out with me on soil. Our next one is going to be on, I said, regenerative agriculture. We still have one on healthy soil, healthy plants and animals equals healthy humans, and then replenishing fresh water sources and small water cycles coming up. And then, like I said, I'm working on a series of interviews on regenerative gardening, like backyard gardening. And then I'm also working on a series of interviews on composting and one on bees. So I've got a couple friends that are beekeepers. And so that's kind of the other stuff that I haven't scheduled yet, but is going to be in the works. And then if you guys have any subjects or topics that you're curious about or interested in, feel free to reach out and email us, and we'll do some research and figure it out and share it with you guys. So with that, I will, I'm actually going to leave us with, if I can make my screen work properly. I do not know why it is not working for me. Why is it not working for me? Give me 1 second. I have a poem to leave us with, but my computer decided it did not want to do what I want it to do. I got it. All right, so I'm going to leave us with a poem that I wrote. It is called "This Is My Legacy." What I say, what I do, who I impact, what I share, what I accomplish, this is my legacy. I say there is a better way. I stand up for Mother Earth. I inspire the hearts and souls of humanity. I share what I have learned, not just what I have earned. This is my legacy. My gift is to share a better way, the better way we've always known, but sadly have forgotten. I tap into the collective to get back to our roots. This is my legacy. I raise compassionate and thoughtful children who carry on what I have started. I partner with a mind and I partner with a supportive husband who shares my dreams and my vision. I peel back the layers for myself and others to reveal the love within. I simplify the process to allow beauty to shine through. I go the extra mile because every day is a beautiful day to be alive. This is my legacy. I live a life I love to inspire others to love the life they live. I live in mind, body, and spirit alignment. I know and embrace my authentic self. I express who I am and why I'm here with grace and ease. I'm a heart of love, a soul of peace, a mind of stillness, and a being of light. This is my legacy. What is your legacy? And with that, we will say goodnight and we will talk to you all soon. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tammy. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Tammy. Good night.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thanks for coming.